Page 116 in your textbook. 116. Let's get into this. Today we're going to start this meeting known as the Constitutional Convention. Alright, yesterday we talked about our country's first attempt at setting up our own government. What was the name of that document, our first attempt? The theory? It was not the Constitution. Mitchell.
Is it the Articles of Confederation?
The Articles of Confederation. That failed because it set up a government that was too weak, not strong enough to defend our freedom. And our nation was in a crisis. We realized this is an emergency. Our country, as young as it was about to end. And this experiment in freedom called the United States of America would have ended in a disaster because we would have all lost our freedom. If we stay under these Articles of Confederation, we would have all lost our freedom, and then everything we've been through, all those struggles and protests and war and death and sacrifice, it would have all been for nothing. Not because of the tyranny of King George III, but because of the weak government we set up under the Articles of Confederation.
Oh.
So, in this emergency, in this crisis, we decided to meet. We call this meeting the Constitutional Convention because that's what's going to come out of it. Now, when they were there, they didn't call it that, but that's what we call it now. So I have a handout for you with a lot of important information on it. All right, don't lose it. Keep track of it. It is also on Canvas under the announcements. You will need to know this information. So instead of writing it on the board this time, I wrote it on a piece of paper for you. By the way, when I write things down, if it's on the board or if I write it on paper, do you think I'm writing it down so I know it?
No.
No, I already know it. All right, I'm writing it down for you. Whether it's on the board or on this paper, when I write something down, it means you need to know it. I'm writing it for your good. All right, so this has a lot of information about the Constitutional Convention, this meeting we're talking about. So let's get some basics out of the way. Where does it take place?
Philadelphia.
It's in Philadelphia, right? In fact, it's in the very same building where we wrote and signed the Declaration of Independence back in 1776. In fact, it's in the very same room. If you look at this famous painting of the Constitutional Convention, this painting's on page 109 in your textbook also. The room may look familiar because it's in the same room where that painting of the Declaration of Independence was. It's just a different meeting, different year. Some of the men there are the same, some of them are different. What year? When did this meeting take place?
1787.
It's in 1787. Just look, check your handout. What do you think I gave it to you for, right? It's in 1787. Now think about that. The Declaration of Independence was 1776. So here we are, same city, same building, same room, 11 years later. Again, some of the men are the same, some of them are different. This time, the issue at hand is our government is too weak. We're going to lose our freedom unless we fix it. Our nation is in crisis. We're not threatened by some outside threat like King George III. We just set up a weak government, and we got to fix that. All right, so let's meet some of the people that are at this meeting, some of the key leaders you'll see on your list. Now, there's 50-some men here, but we're going to focus on a few. First of all, First name on the list you'll see is George Washington. You might be able to find him here on the painting, right? He's always pretty recognizable. There he is, standing up on the platform. What state is he from?
Virginia.
He's a Virginian. He's one of the delegates from Virginia. Each state sent more than one delegate. And he is chosen as the chairman of the convention. He's gonna be in charge of the meeting. He's gonna run the meeting, so to speak. Is he a good leader?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's proven that, right? This isn't very long. This is just a couple of years after he was the general, the commander-in-chief, when we defeated Britain. So he's proven himself to be a good leader. So they put him in charge of the meeting. See, at this time, everyone in America had heard of George Washington. And everyone in America admired and respected him, especially these men who knew him personally. They had even more admiration and respect for him because of his leadership abilities, his accomplishments, and his character. He was recognized universally as a good, wise, and great man. So good choice as our leader for this meeting. All right, the next guy on your list is James Madison. In your textbook on page 117, you have a picture of James Madison. What state is he from? He is also a Virginian, another one of the delegates from Virginia. And what's he remembered as? You can see it on the list, it's in quotation.
Father of the Constitution.
Yeah, he's known as the father of the Constitution. Seems like in history everybody's father of this or father of that, right? James Madison's the father of the Constitution. The reason we call him that is not because he just wrote it all, but because it worked, right? We know the Constitution worked. We still have our freedom, which means no one was ever strong enough to take it away, and no one in our government got enough power to take it away. Our government, our Constitution has protected our freedom all these years. Well, the reason for that is James Madison. He came up with many of the good ideas that made this Constitution so successful. Most of the, and many of the good ideas were from James Madison. So we call him the father of the Constitution. He was also a biblical scholar. He knew a lot about God's Word. In fact, that's where he got a lot of his good ideas. Now, the Constitution doesn't mention God, not even once. Declaration of Independence mentions God, right? We talked about that, creator, divine providence, but the Constitution does not mention God. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some biblical principles built right into it, right? Those ideas came from James Madison, father of the Constitution. All right, next guy on our list, Benjamin Franklin. What state is he from?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. You might be able to pick him out on the painting too, right? Where is he?
Sitting in the chair.
Yeah, he's a guy sitting here in a light blue suit. He was kind of known as a fancy, snappy dresser, so he's not too shy to wear the baby blue suit there. All right, and you notice that he's sitting down. That's because he can't stand up. Look at what we say about him. He's the elder statesman. He's the oldest guy in the room there. He's 82 years old and not in very good health. All right, when he speaks, it's barely at a whisper. He's unable to stand up for very long periods of time. In fact, it's good he's from Pennsylvania. He lives right there in Philadelphia. He would not have been able to make a long trip and get there otherwise. Now, he lives right down the street. And he has aged personal assistants that every day would carry him to and from Independence Hall, back to his home, back and forth, in his chair, because he can't stand up. But as elder statesman, what we mean by that is he is not just old, but he's wise and very well respected by the other men in that room. You've been learning about Ben Franklin ever since elementary school, right? Not just in history class, but probably in English or literature because he was brilliant there. You learned about him in science class because he's a scientist. He's a very wise man. he's gonna offer some wisdom. He's also, his personality, he's kind of lighthearted and funny. He was a witty fella. Right, he knew just the right time where a meeting might be getting some hot tempers flaring. In fact, tomorrow we're gonna talk about their big arguments. And we're gonna need somebody to lend a little humor, keep things a little bit light. He's our elder statesman. All right, next person on the list, on your handout, Alexander Hamilton. His picture is on page 116 in your textbook. What state is Hamilton from?
New York.
He's a New Yorker. All right, and see what we said about him? He was in favor of a strong central government. All right, let's explain that for a minute. What is the name of our country?
United States.
The United States of America, right? We have 50 states. They had 13 in those days. We have 50 different states. We don't have 50 countries. 50 states, right? But all those states are united into one country. But each one of those states has their own government. I think you knew that, right? In Florida, we have a capital. What's our capital?
Tallahassee.
Tallahassee. And there's people that we choose and send them to Tallahassee, and they make laws that are just for Florida. Those laws don't apply to Georgia or Idaho or anywhere else, right? They just apply to Florida. We have our own governor, Ron DeSantis, right? He enforces those laws. Well, every single state has their own government, just like we do. But yet, we're not 50 countries. We're one country. We're 50 states, but we're united. United, what do you mean? United under one central government. That's what Alexander Hamilton is talking about. The central government, which nowadays, of course, the capital is in Washington, D.C. And our Congress makes our laws, and our president enforces those laws, and we'll get into all that. But that's the central government. And we're 50 states, but united under one central government. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, well, now look what it says about Hamilton. He was in favor of a really strong central government. His opinion, that was gonna be necessary to defend our freedoms. All right, so those are some of the important people that are in attendance at this Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. Your book puts it this way, I love it. It says, these are the right men at the right place at the right time to make the right system of government. But you know what? There's some great men who are not there. Some guys that we would call superstars as founding fathers. A whole all-star team of founding fathers who are not there, and your book lists them too at the bottom of page 117. Some guys you've heard of. All right? Thomas Jefferson. I'd say he's an all-star, right? He wrote the Declaration of Independence that gave birth to our country. Guess what? He's not here this year. He was in France at the time. John Adams, great patriot from Massachusetts. He helped write the Declaration of Independence. He's not there either. He happens to be in England. Thomas Paine, Common Sense, these are the times that try men's souls. He's not there. He's back in England also. Great Massachusetts patriot, Sam Adams. John Hancock. They're not here. You know why? Because the people of Massachusetts did not choose them as delegates for this meeting. How about the fiery Virginian, Patrick Henry? Give me liberty or give me death. Would you call him an all-star of founding fathers? I would. He's not here. Because the people of Virginia did not choose him to go to this meeting. We never said this was an all-star team at the meeting. We never said these were the best men alive. We said these are the right men. That reminds me of a scene from one of my favorite movies. Happens to be a sports movie, a true story. Probably have seen it. Miracle on Ice, the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. See, I know you didn't, but I actually watched that game. when it was played on TV. So obviously I was interested in the movie, because I saw the game when it happened. And without getting into too many details, just let me assure you, it is, without a doubt, the biggest upset in sports history, any sport of all time. See, we had to use amateurs, so our players were all college kids. The Soviet hockey team was a bunch of grown professionals who had played together forever. We're putting together a bunch of hockey players from college that had never played together. The chance that we would ever beat them and go on to win the gold medal, not gonna happen, but it did. That's why they call it the miracle. Biggest upset of all time. Well, anyway, back to the movie. My favorite scene was in the beginning of the movie when the coach, a man named Herb Brooks, they got to the hockey tryouts, and he already had his list. He told the guys on the committee, this is the team, these are the guys I want. They said, Coach, you already looked at anybody. Tryout just started. He goes, I know, these are the guys I want. And they said, yeah, but they looked at his list and said, but you don't have this guy, he's the leading scorer in the nation. You don't have this guy, he's one of the best players. You don't have this guy, there's some great players you don't have on your list. And he said, I don't want the best players. I want the right players. Well, that's what happened at the Constitutional Convention. These aren't all the greatest men that were our founding fathers. They're the right men at the right place at the right time to write the right system of government that's going to ensure our freedom for centuries, generations to come. Why we're sitting here and we're still living in a free country, because they nailed it, didn't they? They set up a government strong enough to defend our freedom, but not strong enough to take away our freedom. These are the right men for the job. I mean, think about Patrick Henry, the guy who says, give me liberty or give me death. Does that sound like a personality that would compromise much?
No.
No. And tomorrow we're going to look at a lot of the arguments that these men had in this room, and they solved those arguments with compromises. You know what a compromise is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get exactly what you want?
No.
No. And neither does the other side, right? You give a little, they give a little, you meet somewhere in the middle. Patrick Henry, great as he is, fiery as he is, I love him, I admire him. He's not the right kind of guy for a meeting where you're going to need to compromise. God knew that. God's hand, God's providence in our history, these are the right men to do this particular job, write up a new constitution. All right, so now we know some guys who were there. Very early on, look at your handout, very early on, they agreed we're not going to be able to fix the Articles of Confederation. Remember what we said yesterday? To change the Articles of Confederation, you needed all 13 states to agree on the exact same change. That ain't happening, right? Too many differences in viewpoints among all those states. Which means they're never going to be able to fix the Articles of Confederation. So early on they decided, all right, let's forget that task. Let's start over. Let's scrap the Articles of Confederation. Let's write up a whole new system of government. We'll call it the Constitution. That's what they did. Now, funny thing is, they didn't have the authority to do that. The guys in this room didn't have the authority to write up a new system of government any more than we in this room today have the authority to do that. And they realize that. And they realize it's not like the Constitution is going to take effect just because we write it. Let's just come up with a new system of government, but then we'll take it back to the people of our home states, and if they approve of it, then we'll start using it. But this idea of trying to fix the Articles of Confederation, waste of time. It's just not going to happen. It's not worth fixing. Let's start over. So they agreed on that. Again, tomorrow we're going to talk about a lot of the things they disagreed about, but they agreed they're going to fix the Articles of Confederation. Another thing they agree on, or not fix it, they're going to write a new system of government. Another thing they agreed on right away is this is going to be a secret meeting. They say what happens in this room stays in this room. Now, when we say this meeting took place in 1787, it didn't happen in one day or 1 week. It started in like May and lasted until September, like this time of year. They were there all summer. Now, they didn't stay in the room the whole summer, right? They'd meet during the day, and then in the evening, they'd go get dinner and go back to their hotel, and then the next morning, they'd come and talk and argue and figure out some more, right? Took them all summer to write the Constitution. Well, it's summer in Philadelphia. I used to live outside Philadelphia for 5 years. In the summer, we used to joke because we already knew what the weather forecast was. It's always the same. We said it's gonna be HHH, hazy, hot, and humid. This is gonna be a long, hot summer. So check, look at the painting, look closely. I hope they have a good air conditioner in that room. Do they? No, air conditioning has not been invented. Well, then maybe some fans, like some ceiling fans, keep some air moving? No, there's no electricity. Well, then certainly they're gonna have the windows open and get some fresh air in there, right? Look at the painting. Windows are closed. And look how they're dressed. Not only do they have on long pants, they got knee socks. What's up with that? Alright, and then they just have a jacket on their suit. They got vests and shirts with collars that come up under their chin like this silly thing. And how come they all have white hair? Not because they're old. They're wearing a wig. A powdered wig. That was the style. That was their fashion. I should get out of bed every day, and thank goodness, thank God that style has changed, right? How uncomfortable must that be, especially in hot weather? So you got hot, humid weather, no AC, no fans, windows are closed, a whole bunch of men packed together in a room, and they're dressed with collars up to here, layers of clothing, and wigs on their head. It's gonna be miserable in there. And it goes on all summer, and they're gonna talk about things, tomorrow we'll talk about it, that are very heated as far as temper goes, not temperature, but temper. Well, why so secret? Why do they want the windows closed and everything? Because they don't want some snoopy news reporter hanging outside the window, overhearing them, and writing about their discussion in the newspaper, and twisting their words, you know, fake news. They don't want any of that. So they agree, secret meeting, what happens in here stays in here. And they all promised that every night when they go out to dinner, they're not gonna blab at dinner so someone can overhear them about what they talked about during the meeting. They're not gonna tell anybody else it's not from this meeting what went on. They're not gonna write letters home and tell people at home what they're discussing here. They're gonna keep it all secret. And here's why. They wanna be free to speak their mind, no matter what. So let's say that one day I would stand up in this meeting and I'd give an idea. Kind of a crazy idea, but I'd go ahead and I'll let everybody know my idea. And we discuss it and we all determine, Kiefer, that was a dumb idea. All right, just a thought. And then at dinner, you go tell somebody about my idea and it shows up in the newspaper tomorrow back home in my home state, and everybody's making fun of me for my stupid idea. Now we get back to the meeting tomorrow and you have an idea. Do you think you're gonna stand up and express your idea? No, because you're afraid it'll get out and it might be a dumb idea and you'll be made fun of. So they decided, no, we're gonna keep it secret. What happens in here stays in here. That way, all of us are free to express our ideas. And if they turn out to be dumb ideas, okay, we'll just move on. But you know what? They knew sometimes ideas that at first sound crazy, they might seem like dumb ideas, they turn out to be pretty good ideas. You know, things like the idea of declaring our independence from Britain, the idea that we could actually win a war against the most powerful military in the world, Those sounded like dumb ideas. They turned out to be good ideas, didn't they? So they knew. Let's be free to speak our minds, so let's keep this as a secret meeting. They agreed on that. Right? One more thing they agreed on. They agreed, again, tomorrow we're gonna look at the things they disagreed about. But at first, these are the things they're agreeing on. They agreed what kind of government we're going to have. Check your handout. What kind of government did they think they were quite sure we were going to have? What is it?
By
Mitchell?
Republic?
A republic. Now you need to know this. I need to know that you know this. What kind of government is your country?
Republic.
A republic. We're gonna explain what a republic is, but first let's explain what it is not. It is not a democracy. America is not a democracy. You do not live in a democracy. When you hear someone tell you that this is a democracy, you can be sure that is an ignorant person. They don't know what they're talking about. Now sometimes, just so you're clear, sometimes we use the word democracy in conversation, and what we mean when we say it about America's a democracy or some other countries in the world are a democracy, and we use that in conversation. Sometimes what we mean is that the people have a say in their government. So do we have a say in our government?
Yes.
Yeah, and some other countries do too. So we just use kind of a generic term, a democracy, but that's not what a true democracy is. A pure, true democracy is described in your textbook on the bottom of page 118. You need to read that, that's important. Our founding fathers, in no way, shape, or form, wanted us to be a democracy. No way. And you, nowadays, trust me when I tell you, you do not want to live in a true democracy. A true democracy is like mob rule. A true democracy means that the majority always gets their way. While that might sound good to you, that might sound fair to you, not so fast. What if your viewpoint, what if your opinion is in the minority? What if your position, what if your race, what if your religion is in the minority? Then you won't matter. You are insignificant in a pure democracy. We don't believe in that. In America, we believe in the worth and dignity of every single individual. Every individual has rights given by God, and they deserve to be protected by the law. And the law treats everybody equally, right? Not just those in the majority. And we don't want a pure democracy. That's mob rule. Majority always gets their way. So instead, our founders agreed right from the start. The government we set up is going to be a republic. So let's look at your handout. It describes what a republic is. It's elected representatives have the power. All right, let's stop and think about that. We elect lots of representatives, don't we? We call that representative government. Part of being a republic. Sit up, Maddox. A republic, our elected representatives have power, and so that could be our sheriff, that could be the governor of Florida, that could be our legislators, the guys who make laws for Florida or the country at the U.S. Congress. That could be like the president, President Trump. How did all those people get into their positions of power?
We voted for them.
We chose them. And who are they? They're nothing special. They're just people just like us. Donald Trump, he's just a dude. Barack Obama, just another man. Right? There's nothing special about them. They were not born into royal families, were they? They did not get into their position because of their bloodline. We don't believe in that. Right? They're just regular people, just like us. They said, I'll do it. We said, we choose you. We'll vote for you. You go make decisions on our behalf. That's elected representatives. You know how they didn't get their power? They didn't get their power because of their name, their birthright. They did not get their power because they bought it. They did not get their power because they forced their way into power. You look at me like I'm crazy. There are places all over the world, countries in different parts of the world where that's how the person in power got power. They were born into it because of their family name. They bought it because of their wealth, or they forced their way into it. They got control of the military, the guns, and told everybody in the country, I'm in charge. I know. Not in a republic. In a republic, the people that have the power are elected representatives. Remember, the Declaration of Independence says they get their powers from the consent of the governed. That's us. We gave them their power. And look what it says about their power. Is their power unlimited?
Yes. I mean, no.
No. What is it?
Limited.
It's limited. So can people in power, can they do whatever they want with that power?
No.
Nope. There's certain things they can do, certain things they can't do. What limits their power?
The other people in the government.
Can you read? Goodness gracious, I wrote it down and handed it to you. What limits their power? Peter.
Constitution.
On what? What are you looking at? We're not on canvas. We're on page 117 in your book and this handout. It's in the study hall. Pay attention. What limits their power? I'm going to ask you again.
Constitution.
There you go. Helps when you look at what you're supposed to be looking at, doesn't it? Their power is limited by the written law. Specifically the Constitution, which is the highest law. In other words, Victoria, you have a question?
You said what page you be on?
Yeah, 117.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, 118, 117. In a republic, those who have power, their power is limited by the written law. In other words, the law spells it out, what they can do and what they can't do. They can't do whatever they want. So here's an example. If I'm on my way home from school this afternoon, that sheriff deputy, let's say I don't come to a complete stop at the stop sign, I roll through the stop sign. Does he have the power to interrupt my day and pull me over?
Yes.
Yes, he does have that power. Does he have the power to take my money? In other words, fine me?
Yes.
Give me a ticket so I get fined? Yes, he does. He has that power. That's written in the law. But if I roll through that stop sign, can he pull me over and shoot me?
No.
No, he cannot. Not for running a stop sign anyway. His power's not unlimited. Or how about this? Let's say I obeyed all the laws. I didn't break any traffic laws. Can he pull me over and interrupt my day just because I look funny?
No.
Because he feels like it?
No.
No. That's against the law. See, what we call that is the rule of law. I told you yesterday, I'm going to say it 1,000 times, and I'm probably not even exaggerating. We are a nation of laws, not men. Don't ever forget that, or you'll lose your freedom. We have to follow the law, no matter what happens. Do you understand what no matter what happens means? No matter what happens, we follow the law. That's rule of law. We are a nation of laws, not men. That's how we make sure that no one in a position of power in our government can abuse that power and take away our freedom. Because that law spells it out. These are the things you can do. These are the things you can't do. So let's use President Trump as an example. Or whoever's the president at any given time. Do they have power?
Yeah.
Lots of it. In fact, it's pretty common for people to say the President of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. And there's a lot of truth to that. Because the President can do things that nobody else can do. And all those things are written down in the Constitution. It says the President can do this, 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 and this. But you know what else it says? It says the President cannot do these things. Even the President's power is limited. No one is above the law. We're not a nation of men. We're a nation of laws. So, for example, does President Trump have the power to appoint a Supreme Court justice since there's now an opening?
Yes.
Yes, he does. Because the written law gives him that power, the Constitution. Does he have the power to put 3 judges on the Supreme Court right now just because there's one opening? Because maybe he wants 3 more judges.
No.
No, he doesn't, because the Constitution says he can't do that. See what we mean by their limited power? People in our government have power, there's things they can do, but they can't do whatever they want because we are a nation of laws, not men. If we don't follow the rule of law, listen to this, if we don't follow the rule of law, that means somebody in our government said, yeah, that's the law, but we're not gonna follow it. That law's outdated, or I don't like that law, or that law's a little harsh, we're not gonna follow that one. That's called tyranny. They do not have the authority to decide whether or not we're gonna follow laws. Now, if there's a law we don't like, there's a law that is outdated, you know what we can do? We can change it. We can change the law and then follow the new one. That's fine. That's rule of law. That's being a nation of laws. But we can never, ever ignore it or decide not to follow it, because that means someone in power decided that law doesn't matter. You know what that's called? That's called a tyrant. If they can say one law doesn't matter, then why can't they say any other law doesn't matter, huh? That's very dangerous. That's why things like, what's going on in our news? I mean, 2020 much, right? Even last night, just last night on the news, more riots and breaking things in cities because they didn't like a decision that came out. When we followed the law, we followed the rule of law, a bunch of people said, I don't like that decision, so I'm going to throw a temper tantrum and go break things and hurt people. That's called tyranny. See, there's different kinds of tyranny. King George III type tyranny
Freedom.
is one kind. Mob tyranny is another kind. Right? That's just anti-rule of law. And here's the scary part. Not only that there's mobs, crowds of people that don't want to follow the law, here's the scary part to me, and should be scary to you. The people in charge, the government officials in charge, are oftentimes letting them get away with that. Saying, well, I understand why they're upset. No, that's not rule of law. That's anti-rule of law. You can't have that. That's tyranny. How would you like it if you lived in that neighborhood and that business they decided to burn down was your life's work? They're mad at the government, so they burn down your business. That's not freedom, is it?
Mm-mm.
That's mob tyranny. That's anti-rule of law. Right? So you can't just pitch a fit, throw a temper tantrum, hurt people and break things just because you don't like the way something turned out. What you can do is follow the law. Go through the means and the process to get that law changed. Right? There's ways to do that. That's called rule of law. That's what I mean when I say we are a nation of laws. We must follow the law or we will lose our freedom. Who gets that besides me and you? The guys who wrote the Constitution. That's what being a republic means. Look at it again. It's elected representatives, just people, just like us, who we put in positions of power. They have power over us, but their power is limited by the rule of law, written law, specifically, ultimately, limited by the Constitution. Any questions on a republic?
Mm-mm.
What kind of government do you have?
Republic.
Don't ever forget it. I told you coming up, we're going to talk about arguments they have and compromises. Remember what that means? You don't get your way, the other side doesn't get their way, you both give a little, you meet in the middle. Sometimes the Constitution is called a bundle of compromises. kind of its nickname. And that's the beauty of it. So looking at this painting here, these 50-some men, when they went home at the end of the summer in September, do you realize none of them got what they wanted? None of them got everything they wanted. They were all just a little bit upset or agitated by the Constitution, because none of them got exactly what they wanted. They all had to give a little, they had to compromise. And that is the beauty of the Constitution. That's what we meant in the beginning when we said these were the right men at the right place at the right time to write up the right system of government. It's a bundle of compromises. Tomorrow we're gonna look at those arguments and how they settle them with compromises. Hey, just so you know, sometimes in life, there are principles you do not want to compromise on. It's time to dig in your heels and be stubborn. But there's other times where in order to make some progress, in order to get something done, you're gonna have to be willing to give a little and compromise. Alright? The tough part of life is having the wisdom to know which time to be stubborn and which time to give a little and compromise. That's not always so easy. But our founding fathers, tomorrow we're gonna look at their compromises.